Okay.
Lights, camera, action.
Here we go. All right. So welcome everybody to NErDCamp New Jersey 2020. I am Steve Tatro, and I am super happy that I'm going to be able to moderate a panel on helping students break through writer's block, because we've got some authors who are going to share some methods with us, which is amazing. Let me introduce who we've got showing up today. We've got Jackie Azua Kramer. She's worked as an actor, a singer, a school counselor, the award-winning The Green Umbrella, If You Want to Fall Asleep, and That's for Babies. Jackie's upcoming books include The Boy and the Gorilla, debuting this October, I Wish You Knew and We Are One, coming in 2021, and she is especially excited about her upcoming nonfiction book, Herbert and Dorothy, the story of a postal clerk and a librarian and their extraordinary collection of art, coming out in 2021. So welcome, Jackie.
Hey.
We've also got joining us Jennifer Voigt-Kaplan. She is an award-winning author of children's fiction. Her debut middle grade novel, Crushing the Red Flowers, was endorsed by James Patterson and won a 2020 Christopher Award in the Books for Young People category. The novel is set in 1938 Germany during Kristallnacht and alternates perspectives between two 12-year-olds, a German Jewish boy and a boy in Hitler's young Volk. Jennifer was born in Germany, raised in Philadelphia, and now resides in the New York City area. So welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you.
We've also got Robin Newman. Robin was a practicing attorney and legal editor, but she now prefers to write about witches, mice, pigs, and peacocks. Her debut early chapter book, The Case of the Missing Carrot Cake, a Wilcox and Griswold mystery, which was illustrated by Deborah Zemke, earned a starred review and was selected as a 2015 Best Middle Grade book by Kirkus Reviews. And her debut picture book, Hildy Bitterpickles Needs Her Sleep, illustrated by Chris Ewald, was an American Booksellers Association 2016 ABC Best Books for Young Readers Choice. Welcome, Robin.
Thank you.
And Selene Castrovilla is the award-winning author of 11 books. She's written multiple books about the Revolutionary War, including Revolutionary Rogues, John Andre and Benedict Arnold, Revolutionary Friends, General George Washington and the Marquis de Lafayette, and By the Sword. Melt, book one in her rough romance young adult trilogy, won 6 honors, including the SCBWI Spark Award and the Indie Reader Discovery Award. Her work has also earned recognition from Bank Street College of Education, Booklist, the International School Librarians Association, and the International Literacy Association, and has been placed on state reading lists for California, New York, and Kansas. So welcome, Selene. So without further ado, I want to turn it over to our experts here. As an English teacher, I know that I have struggled for years with trying to help students get over their writer's block. So let's dive right in here. Robin, do you want to start us off with some thoughts?
Sure, I would love to. So one of my favorite quotes is, once asked about the most frightening thing he had ever encountered, novelist Ernest Hemingway replied, "A blank sheet of paper." And we've all had that experience. And there are so many reasons why we experience writer's block, and certainly the current health situation hasn't helped, and writer's block is affecting everybody across the board. It's not just, you know, students, and but it's professional writers. Everyone are dealing with different situations that make it hard to write, and that's totally fine. And you know, you should be a very forgiving of yourself during these very difficult times. And some just basic reasons why writer's block happens is that, you know, we find, oh, it's never the right time to write. You know, there's just general fear about putting words to paper. We're perfectionists, you know, everything has to be perfect. You know, we procrastinate, we panic, you know, we have no idea where to start. And also there are many students also and adults who happen to just have graph motor issues, which makes it extremely difficult just to put sentence to paper. And so just keeping all those considerations in mind, when dealing with these issues, and that whole concept of like, it's okay not to be perfect, and it's okay to just put everything aside. The one thing that I'd like to notice, like some things that probably don't help writer's block are just like, being online all the time, watching television, work avoidance, which is an issue for all of us, I highly recommend staying off media and just really going back to the good old-fashioned notebook, and which is and it's just very basic, but just some things that have helped me in terms of writer's block are just taking baby steps. If you start to think about it, if you start off with like a simple sentence, like something happened to someone somewhere, that's basically just the beginning of a story, and anybody can just add on to it. Jot down everything. If you're a much more visual person, whether you're an adult or a child, just sketching things out. I like to just sketch out lists everywhere, and I keep little notebooks in every single one of my bags. I keep them on my nightstands, just in case like some kind of idea hits me. I'm also extremely messy. I've never been organized. I don't do outlines. I need to have a mental picture of where things are going, but just jotting down things. I keep like little notes at the end of my electronic files so I can just go back to see what I had as an idea. Writing out of order, many authors do that. I was fortunate enough to hear Richard Peck speak on one amazing occasion. He was on a panel with Jerry Spinelli. I know I know, just incredible. And he talked about his system for writing, and he mentioned that he likes to write a book straight through, and it was only until like he finished it that would he go back and rewrite the first chapter after he knew how the ending was already done. So whatever works best for an individual that's the system you should go with. And a lot of people don't think about this, but reading is such a huge way to like get rid of writer's block. Whether you're writing nonfiction or fiction, just pick up a book. It will just spurt ideas. It will get the juices flowing. And, and last but not least, of course, writing prompts are also a very good way. And I just had like a couple of basic exercises. One of the things I love are like fan fiction, and which many teenagers are huge fans of, and especially if you read any Rainbow Rowell's books. And I love the idea where like you take a story that's already written and then you come up with new scenarios and you keep the story going. That's just one way just to get the juices going. That can happen both in nonfiction and fiction. I am a huge fan of fractured fairy tales. That's another thing. And if you're working with younger kids, you can just like point blank, just ask them, so what are your favorite fairy tales? And then you can have them pick and choose which elements they want to play with. And I don't know if you can see this, but in creating fractured fairy tales, students, they can, play around with the characters, they can play around with the setting, they can move the plot around, and also the story can be from a different character's point of view. And I love that whole idea where you can mix and match and come up with your own ideas, even as a starting block. And it's also on a similar thought, just as a writing exercise too. I call them like mad grabs, mad bags. You can just like have a bag full of good guys, a bag full of bad guys, different scenarios, fun, mysterious scenarios, conflicts, and just mix and match all of that. And last but not least, if you're having problems writing, just write a story about your writer's block. So that's pretty much my little helpful pointers. And
that's always a popular one, writing about your writer's block. The kids often see that come up. So that's a really good way to get the wheels turning, at least. Yeah.
It does work.
I love the fractured fairy tales too, especially when you're talking about picking out different elements of the story, because students know what those main elements are. And so when they're able to, pull those out and say, okay, I'm going to try, especially like perspective is so great. I love, oh man, I can't remember whose book it is, but The True Story of the Three Little Pigs.
Yes, John Cheska. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a wonderful book, and I love that book. And it just, I've written a fractured fairy tale, my Hildy Bitter Pickles Needs Her Sleep book, which I just happen to have here. This book was inspired by a weather vane. One of my neighbors happens to have a witch weather vane at the top of their house. And I just gradually kept on thinking like, gee, wouldn't it be interesting if there was a witch and she had some neighbors and they were obnoxious and they just happened to be fairy tale characters. And that's sort of how it just evolves. So you just never know where you're going to find inspiration, but definitely don't give up. And also one thing, it's very helpful. Kids don't often do this, but professional writers do all the time. We have critique groups, and kids should use other kids, their classmates, their teachers, their pets to read their stories too. It's a wonderful way just to get if your dog gives you that little grunt, like, I don't think that's working, it just, you just never really know. But it's very helpful to get feedback from other people, especially if you're struggling a little bit. And that can be a teacher too, so I just thought I'd put that out there.
Absolutely. I was actually telling one of my students earlier today that it's a good idea to build up that writing network of people you can go to with your work, and just, it can be friends, it can be family members, whoever it is. It doesn't have to always be a teacher. You don't have to necessarily get yourself stuck in that pattern. And if you can just bounce ideas off of people, sometimes that's the way we come up with some of our greatest creations, it seems like.
Yeah, it's very true. Since Jackie just happens to be on this call, Jackie and I are both members of the Bank Street Writers Lab, and we have both used the group. It's basically a critique group for published authors, and the group is great. It's been around since like 1937, and
Margaret Wise Brown, Maury Sendak, some of the greats have been. Yeah, it's a little daunting. Yeah, but it's wonderful to share our work with other, professional creators, just to, as Robin mentioned, bounce ideas and see what's working and what's not working. Yeah. Sometimes your dog will do too, If he falls asleep during your story, maybe you got it all wrong.
So true. Yeah. Maybe get a cat instead.
Well, before we have everybody buying new pets, I think we've got some great suggestions. Thank you so much, Robin. I really appreciate it. Jackie, did you want to jump in with some thoughts and ideas?
Yes, sure. Absolutely. I first want to say thank you, New Jersey Nerd Camp. I'm so excited. This is the first for me. I've done Long Island Nerd Camp, and I'm not with you there in person, but I'm with you in spirit. So I'm very excited to be a part of this. So Robin mentioned a word that I loved that really sort of piggybacks and kicks off what I'm going to talk about, which is inspiration. And where does inspiration come from when we're writing, right? It can come from anywhere. But right now, as Robin also mentioned, we are social isolating. And sometimes right now, it seems like, wow, writer's block is a real thing. I am a professional writer, as the rest of us here, and I hear this from my peers right now. There's a lot of that going on. So what do we do when we're stuck at home? And a lot of inspiration can come from the outside world. It can come from going to a museum or going to the theater or taking a walk at the park or just being with family and friends, and we don't have that. So I want to suggest something that all of us have with us all the time, and that you can count on in terms of breaking writer's block. And that's your 5 senses. So sight, sound, smell, touch, and taste. This is something that you could put in your writer's toolbox, along with what everybody else is going to mention, that you can count on all the time, because it's always with you. So how do we apply the 5 senses to breaking writer's block and to our writing? I like to call it spark, ignite, and write. 3 easy steps: spark, ignite, and write. So I'd like to start by share with you my document here. Let's go and let's see if I can find it. Here we go. Okay. Sorry, guys. All right. Can we all see this now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So the Spark, Ignite, and Write. So right now you're looking at a document and it says a sensory web. In the middle, you see something called setting. That's what I'd like to rename as the Spark. That's the Spark box. And around it is sight, sound, smell, taste, feel, or touch. And that's how you ignite. So the spark gets lit and now you ignite. Okay, and by that, I mean, so the spark, right? Now I'm gonna go back, because stop this share for a second. So the spark is the best and the most fun part. What is the spark? So a lot of us stare at the blank page and we freeze. I don't work that way. I really like to use that idea of the spark and the inspiration. But what is that? So it can be anything. It could be a picture. It could be a painting. It could be a movie, a photograph. It could be your favorite song, any kind of music. It could be your favorite cookies or your favorite pizza, right? Just thinking about it, that's the spark. It could be a place like the beach or the park or a beautiful garden. It could also be like a piece of clothing, your favorite cozy sweater or a baseball cap. That's the spark. So now you have the spark. For example, let's say a picture, photograph, and now you fill in the sensory web. So I couldn't find that on my screen, so I'm just going to show you an example of what I'm talking about. So can you all see this, right? So what I have here, yes, you can see it or no? Okay, great. So what we have here is a picture of a boy running with a dog on the beach, right? We see palm trees, we see the sun, we see the kite, right? So now we use this as our spark. And now we start to ignite. Now we fill that sensory web. So for example, sight, what do we see? I mentioned a few things, right? The sun, the palm trees, we see the sand, we see the dog. What do we hear? Possibly waves crashing, the dog barking, the wind blowing, right? What do we feel? We feel the warm sun, right? We feel maybe the soft sand under our feet. What do we smell? Maybe we smell the salty air, suntan lotion, and taste. Perhaps we taste the salty air. Perhaps you just had an ice cream cone. So now you've filled your sensory web, which I just shared with you. I'll show you again. You've ignited and now you write. So now you have all these wonderful words. Start by writing an introductory sentence using some of these things that you wrote in your sensory web. From there, you got a paragraph. From there, keep going, you've got a full page. And I just, I want to close this because this is, I think, one of my favorite things to break writer's block, because it's all about creativity. It's all about inspiration. As a matter of fact, just to bring back this picture, you can double up on this idea of what's the spark. So I've done this with students where I've shown a picture like this and I've played music and I've played dramatic music. And then all of a sudden the story changes. Now the boy's not just flying his kite. Maybe he's running away from something. Maybe he's being chased, right? So you can use music as well to create a mood, right, in your writing. So I think that's all I have to say on that. And I just want to share something what I think is the reality of this type of breaking writer's block. I want to share this simple little image here with you. I don't know if you can see it, but it's just this adorable elephant holding an umbrella, standing in the rain. I found this image, I believe it was on Pinterest many years ago, and there was the spark. I started to think about, so I ignited what's going on here, right? What do I see? What do I feel from this picture? What do I hear, right? And from that came my first published picture book, The Green Umbrella. And that is a true story. I owe a lot to that illustrator. I don't know who that person is, but thank you, because from that came this. Bank Street College Best Books, Parents Silver Medal, and yeah, so there it is. My solution for a writer's block.
Oh, that's such a great point about just inspiration can come from so many places around us if we're just open to it. Wow, that is so wonderful. And I love this idea of the Spark Ignite Right. I've been taking copious notes here as we've been going so that I can bring this back to my students too. This is great.
Yeah. I've definitely have brought this into classrooms and kids are amazed. I'll put up some Van Gogh painting. I'll play music. Sometimes I'll just ask somebody, like once there was a student wearing this really cute, happened to be a Mets hat. And so I put it right there in the center of the classroom. And so I had them all just write something looking at that baseball cap. What comes to mind? What do you think of? And it's amazing the stories that came out of that. Like, I hate the Mets, I love the Yankees, you know? But yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. That's great. So Jennifer, did you want to tag in at this point?
Sounds great. Okay, I'm Jennifer. This is my first time at New Jersey Nerd Camp, so I'm super excited to be speaking to you even virtually. I'll give you 5 of my favorite tips, how I overcome writer's block. So just for some background, I mostly at this point write middle grade novels these days. My debut middle grade novel, Crushing the Red Flowers, was just released this past November. And as Steve said, it's set in 1938 Germany. It's about how 2 ordinary boys cope under the extraordinary circumstances of the pogrom we call Kristallnacht. And it alternates 2 perspectives between 2 boys, a German Jewish boy and a boy in Hitler's Jungvolk. Tip number 1, which is to keep up with your creative muse. And Robin alluded to this before, and I completely agree with her. From the very beginning, I created what I call an idea repository, which is one document. I get a lot of creative ideas, but my creative muse is really fickle, and she is super productive at odd times and never productive at the times I want her to be. So when she's working, I need to make sure I capture everything she says, and if I don't, I'll forget it 5 seconds later. So I started this idea repository, which is basically just an Excel document, but it could really be any kind of application. And it has a million different tabs. I have tabs for character traits and plot ideas and great line, and even like a tab for weird concepts and verbs I love. Anything and everything that I could use in my writing. And I refer to it in the beginning of a project for inspiration, and I use it in the middle of projects if I'm stumped on something. Tip number 2, use your own family heritage and history for inspiration. I won't go into this too long because I saw there's another amazing sounding Nerd Camp workshop that's covering this very topic in greater detail. But when I do school visits, I talk about this a lot. To write my novel, Crushing the Red Flowers, I use my own heritage to find ideas. My heritage is half German and half German Jewish. So the story is fictional, but it's based on true family experiences. And I felt as though when I grew up, I had an insight and almost like a multi-layered understanding in the challenges that residents of Germany faced, Jewish and non-Jewish, during that time. At school visits, I tell the kids, start with what you know. Is there something special about their family? Maybe their heritage or their nationality, but maybe, it's the harrowing story of how their grandmother emigrated from Amsterdam, or maybe that old family story that's funny about how their grandfather won that big ping pong tournament, or the dog grooming tournament, or the soup eating contest, whatever it is. Maybe one of their relatives has never been out of the state, or maybe they've never eaten a banana. That's all character development. Tell your kids to write it down and encourage them to keep asking family members questions to find inspiration. Every single tidbit they learn should go into their idea repository, because the ideas could be great for a future project. So before I write a novel, I like to do a lot of pre-work on characterization and plot. So for me, these are not only fantastic planning tools that help me sort of get my writing project started, but I also use them as a diagnostic tool that helps me prevent writer's block later on. So tip number 3 deals with characterization. Spending the time on characterization before you start, for me, is critical. It helps develop characters, and you can use the information to flesh out the plot, which means fewer chances to experience writer's block down the line. And I have a characterization grid, which I'll share with you in a second so you can see what I'm talking about, but I wanted to mention that it's important to fill out this characterization chart for all your characters, not just the main character. I made this mistake. I had only filled out a grid for my 2 main characters when I started. And it wasn't until I went through the exercise again about halfway through writing my novel and filled it out for my side characters that I overcame writer's block, and I found sort of the story meat that I needed to get past the sagging middle. So now I spend days, maybe even sometimes weeks, filling this out for my characters, and it makes my writing better, and it will save the writer time in the future. So let me see if I can share the grid. Hopefully you're seeing a characterization grid right now. I won't spend too much time on this, but I'll just call out a couple of points. You know, on this axis are the traits, on this axis are the characters, and you start off with basic stuff, the character name and the age and the grade, what is he or she like. And of all the things on my characterization grid, I want to call out these 2 points. Number 1, it's the wants, desires, and goals. You need to understand this of all your characters. This is really, you know, the heart of your novel, what pushes the plot forward. And number 2, secrets. You need to know, everybody has a secret. All of your characters have secrets, and you need to know what they are. When I went through a second time, you know, midway through my novel, this is where I found some really good juicy stuff about one of my side characters. So the rest is sort of strengths, weaknesses, hobbies, pets, prized possessions, things most proud of, embarrassing moments, role models, you know, had they had a recent birthday party, what was the theme and where, handwriting style, what's hanging on their bedroom wall, where do they live, who do they live with, friends, enemies, what do they look like hair and eye color, a distinct physical feature, maybe a distinct mannerism or gesture, a speech habit perhaps, a catchphrase. I love writing my characters' catchphrases. How do they walk? Grooming habits, stuff like that. You can, you know, feel free to add many more. And I happen to love the characterization process. So for me, it was really fun. I use this technique in the beginning when I get to know my characters, and I keep it handy, and I really do refer back to it, and I embellish it as I continue to write. So the next tip, I'm going to call it post-it note plotting, which I also love to do before I start to write. I find visual plotting to be very, very helpful. So what I do is I use a large poster board and lots of different colored post-it notes, and I map out everything before I start to write. And this can take days, weeks, or maybe even months, but I wouldn't shortcut this either. So for setting, you can see at the very top, I use sort of like a big pale yellow sticky. For characters, I use multiple blue post-it notes, one for each character. Then for the general plot, I use yellow post-it notes. And I also like using post-it notes because I can move them around. Sometimes I find a scene works better, you know, later on or earlier on than I had originally thought. For questions and stuff I still need to figure out, I use purple post-it notes. And I certainly think it's okay. If you don't know every little thing right off the start, you have writer's block right off the start, that's okay. You have something. And I actually think it's good to keep a little degree of spontaneity in your novel as you continue to write. And for big plot twists, I use orange post-it notes. These are the most important to me. You can capture your inciting incident, the climax plot twists, other big plot points that keep your readers surprised. So this is how I use this plotting tool. It not only helps me plot, but it helps me diagnose potential problem areas early on. And what I mean by that is I make sure I have enough orange post-it notes scattered throughout. And if I don't see an orange post-it note after a few chapters, I know my writing is sagging and I need to beef up the plot. So by identifying this problem early, it could potentially avoid writer's block later on. And then for my last tip, and I'm going to echo Jackie. I love Jackie's method of using art and her sensory web to overcome writer's block. Hang on one second. Let me give you a different visual to look at while I talk. There we go. I use other forms.
I love that painting.
I love this too.
I'm already thinking of a story.
Oh, well. I use other forms of art all the time when I'm writing paintings, music, even sculpture. As Jackie alluded to, the trick is to look at the piece and ask yourself why you are having an emotional response and dissect it. When you move from the emotional to the analytical, you can observe and dissect and describe well. So I personally used a number of different art forms when I was writing Crushing the Red Flowers, but I'm just going to mention this one. I found a portrait by Oskar Kokoschka. He's an Austrian artist. He painted this in 1937. When he was painting the self-portrait, he learned that a number of his other pieces were included in the Nazis' degenerative art exhibition. He was obviously affronted, and his response was to change directions of his self-portrait. He continued painting, but he crossed his arms in defiance of the Nazis' ban against modern art. He portrayed himself staring directly at the viewer, which was somewhat unusual at the time. And he changed the title of the painting to Self-Portrait of a Degenerative Artist. This act of defiance was quite powerful to me to read about. For the purposes of my novel, it was important for me to understand how the everyday person resisted Nazis. Specifically, I needed to understand how a 12-year-old boy could resist. So with Kokoschka's self-portrait, we see a painter resist by doing what he did every day, painting, and that's very powerful. So I was inspired by this and other pieces, and I was able to generate ideas for my own work and ultimately write a book that gave middle grade readers an authentic introduction to the Holocaust. So that's it. Hopefully I did in my allocated time, and I hope all my tips were helpful to your kids in their creative pursuits.
Wow, that's really amazing. I'm looking at that picture and I'm just, the more I look at it, the more detail I see and the more ideas it sort of spins out, because one of the things I love about that particular piece is that it is a little bit abstract. There is a lot of room to interpret sort of what you're seeing, especially in those backgrounds. And
there's actually another detail which I didn't mention. This is a figure. You can see here in red. I'm not sure if you can see my mouse, but there's a figure.
Could you put it back up? I just turned it off for a second.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
Sorry about that.
You can
Perfect.
see it?
Yes,
okay.
Thank you.
So there's a figure in the background, and that is actually, this is also in addition to the revised portrait. This is a figure in persecution. So at one hand, this is a human being defiant to the Nazis. On the other hand, he is acknowledging that he is being persecuted and honoring that as well.
That is so amazing. And like when you look at the sky in the background, the oranges and the reds are very evocative of sort of fire, which could be very much tied into the whole situation of that time. I mean, that's just, there's so much going on here. Wow, that's a really great, thank you so much for sharing this piece.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah.
Wow.
Thank Oskar Kokoschka.
And I think, you know, if I can add, one of the biggest takeaways that Jennifer actually said that I think resonates when you're using the sensory web and when you're looking at this painting is the emotional connection. What is it that you're feeling when you see this, right? You start to pick things apart, but in the end, all of those things, all that sensory stuff adds up to some kind of emotional connection. And that's what you want to have in your writing in the end, right? You want people to feel something about your writing, right? It's not just words on a page. It's really feelings, emotions on a page, right? That come through character, that come through setting. Yeah, I mean, I wish I had, Robin and I are probably a little jealous of all the Post-its. I mean, I only write picture books and we get a mere, you know, this is not completely always the case, but about 500 to 600 words to express what we need to have you feel and experience in a picture book. So I don't know if I have as many, but I do use the idea of who are these characters? Like I make little charts for myself, you know, like what's their favorite ice cream, or, you know, I really become the hedgehog if I'm writing about a hedgehog or something like that, or, you know, yeah, be the hedgehog, be the whatever the character is. Yeah.
Sorry, Jackie, I didn't mean to cut you off, but even though we both write picture books, I also write early chapter books, but I do character studies. I find that they're extremely helpful because you really want to differentiate your characters, even if you are just writing a picture book. And so if I happen to be writing about like two mouse detectives, I want to be very clear as to what their personalities are, what their likes are, what their dislikes are. You know, and it also goes to plot too, which is such an important element of storytelling. So it's like, what do they want? What gets in their way? And that's that constant, you know, going up that little story arc, you know, and developing the character and the challenges that they're facing, because you really want to write a story that has meat in it. And so even though like Jackie and I and Selene also, we do write the shorter version, all those characters. But I mean, and if you look at any picture books, you're going to see that same kind of development and story arc, and you'll see it too, for the individual characters. So yeah, great. I'm so glad you talked about that, Jennifer. Thank you. Yeah.
I think it's so great that, you know, we've got 3 different authors who work in very different styles of writing and different methods of getting there, but you also have these things in common. And I think it's really great for the students to be able to hear, like, it doesn't matter what you're writing or how you're writing it. Here are techniques that work across styles and across, you know, the format that you might be writing in. So Selene, what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, well, my area of expertise really is nonfiction. And there's good news and bad news about writer's block for nonfiction. The good news is, well, the really good news is that I don't actually believe in writer's block. I think we should stop calling it writer's block. We're romanticizing it, and we should just say, let's brainstorm, and just take the 2 words writer's block out of the equation. But if we want to continue with that, and we will for the sake of this argument, I do have some very concrete things to do. So not is a gift in a way to writer's block, because what are the basic questions? What do the people say mostly about writer's block? I don't have any more ideas. I'm stuck. You know, I don't know what to write next. Well, that literally cannot happen with nonfiction, because we know what to write, because it's the truth, right? We've researched somebody's story. It's a biography, or it's something in history, or even in science, it's something that actually happens that's being described. So we cannot use any of those excuses at all. We know what to write next. So in that way, it's a big gift. The facts are our friends. So how do we get writer's block? Well, sometimes the facts are not our friends. The very thing that helps us actually could be very crippling, because it's just so immense. So I'm going to give you some examples of how facts can actually cause writer's block, and how to not have it, how to get rid of it if you get it. And so you get back to the brainstorming. So the first thing is, there's so many facts. I mean, it's debilitating, right? I mean, when I wrote this book, Revolutionary Friends, okay, now it started out with a full-scale biography of Lafayette, and for young adults, we were going to do it. And I was researching my speech pattern. It seems to be going away in captivity over here. But in any case, Lafayette wrote a lot. And it's great when primary sources are the key, you know, to learning about history. You know, we need to know from the people's mouths that were there. But when they keep going on and on and on, it never ends. And it's like, I put my shoe on, and, you know, I brushed my hair, you know, and I'm like, oh no. So you really can feel like you're going to die from all this information, you know, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages, you know. So it's like, whoa. So the best thing to do, what I did, was I made like a timeline, okay? And every time I found new information, I would just stick it into the timeline. Now, I did not stick in when he brushed his hair or anything like that. I just put in the really pertinent things, and it really allowed me to feel control of the situation, because it can feel like you're buried in an avalanche of facts. So actually, what I did with that timeline in the end was it's now at the back of my book, a simplified simplified version. I have the timeline of the life of Marquis de Lafayette as well as one of George Washington. So I actually put that information to good use. But I really feel that you must organize. It will alleviate so much. You'll feel a sense of control if you have a guide, some sort of guide. It doesn't have to be a timeline per se, some sort of outline, anything that you want it to be, a working thing. Do it on the computer. This way you can always add or subtract. If you write it down, you're constantly going to have to be crossing out. I like to write in longhand, don't get me wrong, and I know Robin's into that for sure. But you can't do that when you're compiling your information, or you're going to lose your mind. You're going to constantly be throwing out, ripping up, erasing, rewriting. No, type it in a computer where you can. This is the glory that we are not in the time of just quills. We have to embrace what we have.
As a teacher, I'm always telling my students, some of them like to handwrite things. I'm like, that can be great, but take advantage of the tools that you have, because technology lets you do all of that revising, like you're saying.
Yeah, especially when it comes to research, because research, wow, it is a lot. You can even make a document of your sources, and you should actually, because otherwise you're going to forget where you found stuff. So always make a document of what your sources were, if you found a particularly wonderful quote, keep it going, because if you start to put it together at the end, it's a nightmare. So anyway, that's a big problem. Okay. And like I said, I had the problem with the Marquis de Lafayette, had a lot to say. And really, I kind of got lost for a long time, and I didn't know what to do. I was going to make it a long birth to death type of thing. And it was just too much. But I found what I like to call le fact juste. Okay. So you might have heard that Flaubert said you must find le mot juste, the perfect word. He said, when you find the perfect word, the use of any other word will make you nauseous. You must find this word. Well, I say, when you're writing nonfiction, you find le fact juste. Now, le fact juste is that fact you must share with the world. And if you're doing your research, you will find it. You will find it, because you will start to really care about the person. Remember, these are real people. And it's and no matter how, I know a lot of students will be like, oh, so boring, but they're not. They were human like us. How did they overcome their problem? How did they find, what is this one moment that their life led up to? It could be anything. It could be the day they wore a weird pair of underwear. Anything that excites the person to write this, right? So for me, it was that Lafayette was in the Battle of Brandywine, and he was wounded, and Washington had him brought back to headquarters. He was laying there wounded, and Washington said to his personal physician, "Treat him as my son, for I love him the same." I love that, a declaration of love from George Washington. I just thought that was, come on, does he love this French guy? He didn't even like foreigners. It was amazing. So I said, I want that to be the moment. I'm sharing that moment. So then the idea is to get everything to lead to that moment. So then you have your map, then you have your guideline. So all we really have to do is lead whoever we're teaching or ourselves to that point where we find that fact, le fact juste, and then it's like, let there be light. We have that motivation. So the second problem is sometimes that we don't have a fact. Okay, this could be a really big problem. You're writing something and you're missing a key fact, and I've seen a lot of people, young people especially, stumble like, "Why? I can't do anymore. Can't find it. I'm gonna go play a video game, right? I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that." I got one upstairs right now, and he's in college. I'm like, no, you can go around it. Okay, we'll find it later. I have so this book was my first book. It's called By the Sword, obviously, and it's about this guy is named Benjamin Talmadge. He was Washington's chief of spies, but this is about his first experience at war. He was he was a teacher, and he gave up everything to go fight. And so it's a really great, like, a personal story about war, but also about the Battle of Long Island, which was like our first battle after the Declaration of Independence, and it was almost our last because we lost it, but Washington saved all his men. So it's beautiful. Well, is battle beautiful? It's a beautiful story in a way, because Washington saves his men and loves them. And this horse got saved. This horse, who's now I know his name is Highlander. I did not know at the time. That's the fact I was missing, the horse's name. It's a pretty important fact. my editor said I can't publish the book without it. I'm like, oh my God, talk about pressure, right? So I needed, because it was really, it wouldn't be important if it was just a horse, but it was a horse that he loved. He rode that horse to school every day. He rode it then to the Battle of Long Island. He loved that horse so much. He kept talking about the horse. And in the end, when he was actually safe against all odds, you know, he was one of the last people, he almost didn't get to safety. He realized he left his horse behind, and he went back to save his horse's life. Okay. That's why obviously you need to know the horse's name. Kind of falls flat. So I did find that name. However, I did not let it stop me at the time, because I knew when I was writing that story, I had a momentum. When you write, momentum is key, okay? Whether it's nonfiction, fiction, whatever, poetry, if you're in that groove, you can't stop to go look for a fact you can't find. And I think that a lot of kids do that. They're like, no. They want it all lined up, but no, leave it blank. Leave a blank spot in that sentence. You'll get it. I promise later on we'll find. If you want to contact me to help you find the fact, I will. I promise. Okay. People tell me I should be a private investigator. I find facts. Okay. And I will help. Let it go. Work on your story. You just calm, relax. And then it'll all come down. When I found this horse's name, it was months after I finished writing the manuscript. I plugged it in and I had my story and it was published. And that was, we have to have faith. I mean, I think writing requires faith, among other things, but faith is key. You have to believe in it. So you have to believe that the blockage will not last. You will find that missing information. We just have to live. It's a great metaphor for life, right? You have to believe. You have to believe things are going to work out. You have to, let go. So going back to the facts, the third fact, I just have to scroll down because I don't trust my memory. Okay. The third fact is the problem when we have so many facts. Again, it's going back to the deluge of facts. And you've done all this research, and you have so many. You've got your timeline, you've got your document, everything. But then you're like, what's the point of all this anyway? Who cares about all these facts? What was I even trying to say? You've got so many facts that you've lost your whole vision. Okay, and that can happen to anybody, but especially young people. It's so easy for that. They just like, all is lost. I give up. Why was I even doing this? Oh, maybe if I turn it in this way, I'll get a C or a D. It'll be good enough. No, we want them to remember the glory in it, the passion. This is the time to really rekindle and say, no, remember, the focus was everything. What did you want? I mean, this happened to me with pretty much everything, but like with this book, Revolutionary Rogues, is about John Andre and Benedict Arnold, a complex story. It's like a betrayal of humanity. Benedict Arnold was our greatest soldier, really won the Battle of Saratoga, which didn't get credit, part of the problem, became our worst traitor ever, synonymous with treason, Benedict Arnold. Why? How could our greatest soldier become our greatest traitor? Unbelievable. John Andre was a British soldier. We should hate him. No, he was beloved by the American army. They wept when he was executed. So what did I want to say? Well, it was a complicated story. And then, when I started reading all these things, again, you read letters, you read this, you read that, you become numb from all the research you're doing. Primary sources aren't necessarily fun. They're fun because, wow, I'm getting the truth. But they're also sort of boring, because the person didn't know they were writing it to give you that fact. So they wrote a lot of facts. They wrote a lot of facts that you don't have any interest in, and you have to sort through it, right? Mm-hmm. So think of this. I think of what Michelangelo said. He said, I saw the angel in the marble, and I carved till I set him free, okay? We can apply that to writing nonfiction because we see the story, right? We found le fact juste, right? It's in that stone. We have to carve till we set it out free. And if we take that, we can rekindle the passion. Okay, we just have to have that memory of what we were going for, because it's going to get lost. We're human. We feel despair after a while when we've been working so hard. We need to refresh. We need to take a break. We need to regroup, recharge. Go back to that passion. Go back to the thing that meant something all along. That thing, the hook, right? And then remember, and it's okay to even think of, question it. Say, is this what I really wanted to say? But then I'm gonna say 9 times out of 10, it is the thing they wanted to say. They just had to remember it. They just had to be recharged and remember that passion again. It's just like we have to sleep, we have to eat, we need to refresh ourselves. So find that hook, and it applies to everybody of any age. And this whole thing can be used. It can be modified for any age group, and you set to really personify finding that fact. You could make it like a treasure hunt. You could make it a CIA. We're working for the CIA. We're hunting. There's so many ways. And in my document where I gave more information, I clarify everything. I know I speak fast. So in any case, the whole idea is to really make it fun for all of us. Believe me, I try everything to make it fun, but with that passion. Passion is fun. We just have to recognize it as that. A lot of times these days, I hear kids say that they're bored, and I don't understand that because there's nothing. We need the passion. And it's up to us to fire up that passion in them, to let them see that it is not boring, and there is no block. There's no true block. The block is something that's in our head, and we can make it go away. And the way to really make it go away is through that passion. The passion for in this case, the passion for the truth, for nonfiction. And I think that's good.
So thank you all so much for talking with each other as well as talking with us about these great techniques that you're bringing.
Every single thing that Robin and Jackie spoke about, I can use in my writing.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why we call it the writer's toolbox, because not, one thing is going to work on a certain day. I mean, you spoke about that, Jennifer, about the muse. Sometimes when you want the muse to be there, darn it, she just, or he doesn't show up, or it, right? So we have to reach into our little writer's toolbox to find different ways to sculpt the sculpture, to chisel away and to get to our story in the end. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. My pleasure. I wish we could be together in person, but this certainly is a wonderful way to still get together. I always answer anybody that wants to contact me. I always write back. So I'd love to hear any thoughts.
Excellent. All right. That's good to know. Thank you all so much. I am so grateful to you for sharing your time and sharing your thoughts with us. I know that we're going to have a lot of really happy educators out there and librarians out there who are going to get the chance to partake in your sharing of this knowledge. So thank you all so much for coming to nErDCamp New Jersey 2020. And
Yay.
hopefully next year or in the future, we will be able to get you into the actual real place with some real folks.
Absolutely. Yes. Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you for having us. Yeah.
Yes.
It was absolutely my pleasure. All right. Well, thank you all so much and take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank
And
you.